So 1 week ago today, we saw the total drubbing of Republicans by Democrats around the country. And it was not just the top line races, the gubernatorial races we were looking at. The further down the ballot you went, the more convincing the victory was in some ways. One particular election stands out in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's a suburban swing county just outside Philadelphia. The Republican incumbent sheriff there had entered into a voluntary contract to collaborate with ICE. And last week, that MAGA sheriff was soundly defeated by a Democrat who promised to put an end to that agreement. So in a quintessential swing county, one that Donald Trump carried in 2024, an election that turned on whether people were okay watching ICE pick their neighbors up off the street, voters chose the Democrat. Joining me now is the new sheriff-elect of Bucks County, Democrat Danny Zeisler. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
I think you might be the first sheriff-elect I've ever had on the program.
I was going to say, you got Ro Khanna, you've got Hakeem Jeffries, Mikey Sherrill, and batting cleanup, the sheriff-elect.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your victory. How would you describe what this race was about?
So, even more so than ICE, this was a county that Donald Trump won just a year ago. So you had an incumbent sheriff who decided to take that and double down on kind of the politicization of the sheriff's office, and not just incorporating ICE, but all sorts of other kind of far-right policing tactics. I wasn't running on using politics really at all. I mean, my background, I'm a soldier, I'm an attorney, and I have hated how politics have made its way into public safety. So I really ran on just bringing it back to basics, executing the core duties and responsibilities of the office, and delivering a professional and effective public safety agency for Bucks County.
You know, one of the things that I saw you articulate in this race I thought was interesting was people talk about this notion of a sanctuary city, which has become this sort of very polarizing term. One of the things you talked about is the logic of not having local law enforcement enforcing immigration law, right? And one of the things that your opponent wanted to do was to sort of deputize the person that people work for him to grab people for immigration infractions. You said that actually doesn't work for safety reasons. What was the case that you were making?
Yeah, and actually, when you introduced me, and I hate to disagree with something, but you said I ran against ICE.
Yeah.
I didn't run against ICE. I ran for public safety and common sense law enforcement. And the 287G agreement, that is that voluntary agreement with ICE. Yep.
By the way, it's a longstanding part of the law, and this has been a flashpoint for sheriff's elections around the country even before yours.
Yes, and this program's really been weaponized over the last, I guess, year or so, and then about 4 years ago. Yeah. It makes communities less safe for a bunch of reasons. First off, you're having deputies, you're taking them away from their core responsibilities. That's why in Bucks County we've had over 5,000 bench warrants pile up. So I'm going to talk about how we're actually taking deputies away from their role keeping people safe. And then it also torches the relationship between immigrant communities and local law enforcement, who we rely on to call the police, to come into court and testify. And that's not just about making immigrant communities more safe, though it is. It's about making all of us more safe. And that's why actually leading policing organizations recommend against mixing local law enforcement and immigration.
This logic, I can't emphasize enough. This has been the logic for law enforcement across the country for decades. I mean, it's the reason that if someone is victimized by a predator, if someone witnesses a crime, you want them to call the police. You then, let's say it's a homicide, right? You're going to need them to come to court to testify if they're the eyewitness. You can't make that case if they won't set foot in a court. Like, what does it do to the actual, project of the law if a courtroom now becomes this terrifying place for immigrants around the country?
And we had multiple people actually picked up from the courthouse in Bucks County in the last few weeks. Look, I had an activist reach out to me who represents part of the immigrant community in Bucks County, who told me nobody in her community has called the police in the last year, not one that she knows. And again, that hurts everybody, not just the immigrant community that is afraid to call the police.
I want to play a little sound for you of Bucks County resident, sort of, at a town meeting, just talking about this feeling that something fundamentally un-American and authoritarian was happening in this country. Take a listen.
Everybody should have a copy of the U.S. Constitution. It's $1.99 from Amazon. Okay? This is where we're talking about rights. there's no due process with the ICE process that they're following. We're not going to be an authoritarian government. We're not going to be a police state. So stay in your lane.
You knocked a lot of doors in this race. It's not the kind of race that you can win with huge drops of ad money, right? You knocked a lot of doors. How much did you hear concerns about this sort of existential question about us being a free society and the tactics that we're seeing?
Yeah, and that gentleman made a great point. He used the word due process. And that's something that as an attorney, I have really cared about. And I want to be very clear. If we have people in our custody who are in the country illegally, who have committed violent crimes, and they receive due process, we'll cooperate with ICE there. But people, when they see people, with the masks, just pulling people off of the street without any form of process whatsoever, that seems to violate the Constitution, which I swore an oath to protect and defend. But people just want due process. They want their Constitution to be followed. And again, violent criminals, yes, but that's separate than just your mother's at the grocery store, which also happened in a county right next to us. 14 people in a grocery store were taken. Really? Yes.
Bucks County is, we call it a quintessential swing county. For a very long time, it kind of was a quintessential swing county. George H.W. Bush won in 92, and then it had trended towards the Democrats. And then Trump won it in 2024. Huge wake-up call. Tell me a little bit about the place you live and what it says that you were able to win this race by, I think, 11 points, right? Against someone who really did identify with MAGA, who really presented himself as a MAGA sheriff.
So Bucks County is the swing county in the swing state. It's about 650,000 people, roughly one of the 100 largest in America. And it's really three counties in one. You have Lower Bucks County, where I live, which is kind of more working class, more urban, really an extension of Northeast Philadelphia. Then you have Central Bucks County, which is more suburban, a little wealthier. And then you have Upper Bucks County, which is more agricultural and rural. And because it's such a 50-50 county, and it really is, it tends to create really good government, actually. It tends to reject extremes on both sides. And that's really what I am and what I was trying to present was just good, common sense, effective government.
Bucks County Sheriff-elect Danny Seisler, thank you very much. We'll be right back.